What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Cramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Crossover Commerce. I'm your host, Ryan Cramer, and this is my corner of the internet where I bring the best and brightest in the Amazon and e-commerce space. It seems we're having a little bit of lag in video and audio, so bear with me as it catches up with the lightning amount of information I'm going to throw at your way this episode. So, Crossover Commerce, as you may or may not know, this is episode 235 of my corner of the internet where I bring the best and brightest. That means that there's 234 amazing episodes out there on social media, as well as all your favorite podcast destinations. That can be on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcast, wherever you might listen to your favorite podcast. That's where we're going to be at. So go ahead and sign up and download all of our past podcasts today, or you can go to our presenting sponsors website, Ping Pong Payments. Go to usa.pingpongx.com/podcast for all of our past episodes, transcripts, key takeaways, and resources that we talk about in every single episode. That's where you can find them as well. We'd love to have you there and subscribe to the podcast. Or if you are listening or watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, you might garner the this is a live podcast. That's the beauty of what I've established in the past year and a half plus of this podcast, is being able to talk to people live, answer questions that might come through social media. If you have them about our topic or for our guest or myself, feel free to drop those below. You can, don't feel shy. Go ahead and let us know where you're listening from and share this podcast with all your friends or entrepreneur friends that might need to hear this today or in the future. I was jokingly telling people even 15 months ago, I've had clients that have reached out to people who have appeared on the podcast over a year and a half ago, and they found this episode, found great information, and they connected. That's the power of podcasting. That's also the power of this show. So with that being said, as you may or may not know, I also have bring back past guests that are just dynamite. They're people that bring ultimate value to entrepreneurs, listeners, and people in the space. They just know what they're talking about, guys. They're experts for a reason, and they're growing along with the Amazon and e-commerce community. That being said, there's a lot of cool things I want to talk about today. We established this episode pretty quickly, and may or may not be a little bit of controversy in here. Why Mexico could be the next China. What does that mean? It mean it's not on a country level, it's about sourcing logistics level. So of course I had to bring back a friend of the show, Chelsea Cohen of SoStocked, to give us an insight. What does that mean? What are we looking for? The pros and cons of each that each brings to the table, and why you might need to look at Latin America for your sourcing opportunities a little bit closer to home if you're in the United States, or just diversification in general. So without further ado, I want to welcome back to Crossover Commerce, Chelsea Cohen of SoStocked. Chelsea, thank you for coming back on Crossover Commerce today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I wish my video was not lagging. Hopefully it's not on your end, but it's very, very distracting on my end. So I'm just going to stare off on this.
Some of the most annoying things that happen in video calls.
This is a subject of, I think I have too many tabs open, because once I clear them all out, I think that will certainly fix the problem. So I'm going to do a little bit of that inventory. But hey, you're friends of the show. People should be listening. Last time I had you on the show was May of last year, which is crazy to think. Yeah. But we were able to connect at Prosper Show in person, and just you were super busy. Your husband was there. He was super busy, running around like crazy. Didn't get a chance to talk to you as much, but how's it been since we last saw each other?
It's been good. It's been very busy, very productive. You know, on top of all of the craziness happening in my own businesses, helping out on putting together this Mexico trip, which I think is an exciting opportunity for the industry in general. So, you know, of course, I got asked to come on board to help out as an expert speaker, but also kind of the operations team. And it's been great. I get really excited about logistics. And so, you know, looking at the logistics of Mexico versus China has been kind of fun for me. Fun and exciting.
There's no one out there that's putting more great information about sourcing logistics, I think, in one email or subscription than I think you are. But like, I read everything, every article you link out to, everything. No one is as good as watching the industry as I think as you are. Like I'm just gonna say it right here on the podcast. I can't take it back because it's on the internet, so it exists.
Yes, it's cemented in history now. Well, thank
Exactly.
you. I appreciate that. It's important to stay kind of plugged in, and our team goes through, I think, over 1,000 articles a month to really find those gems. And then of course I filter it through my own understanding and knowledge of what is important for sellers to know, because it really is hard to consume content and stay up to date. So you just want we do 5 bullets, 5 bullet points, and you can kind of dive into what you want. And I think that's the best way to consume content with our busy schedules.
Right. Exactly. Well, social listening is super important, but as entrepreneurs, it's hard to just like sit on LinkedIn or Facebook or look at all these new channels so quickly. I think a lot of people do that all day. And then I come to find that they have a team of 20 working for them doing that. When I try to do it all myself, it's not possible. But so last time we had you on, we talked about SoStocked. You guys are a software, but also correct me if I'm wrong, you're selling on Amazon as well? You're still selling?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're still crushing it in the game, right? Still looking good. How was 2021 for you? Back half and into this year?
Yeah, it definitely had kind of an upward trend for us compared to 2020. So yeah, we start seeing, I mean, of course it's not, I wouldn't say it's back to where it was before, but it's definitely improved from the madness of 2020.
Right. And you're not selling toilet paper as we see in your banner in the back. That's part of your marketing,
No,
things like
we
that.
do not.
Well, it's very cool. So you're developing software. You were teasing before the show a lot of cool stuff that's happening too. But we wanted to get you on. I think the topic is super not polarizing. I think it's very truthful, and I think I want to distinguish that because we have a lot of friends, supplier friends in China. I know I have a lot of people who source from China. A lot of people utilize that as if that's the go-to place because of it was cost, it was efficiency, it was the systems are in place. So why now are we? Kind of paint the picture of Mary Chelsea. Why now do people need to start looking elsewhere?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that's been happening in China. We've seen lead times starting in 2020, lead times increasing. And that was one of the things people in our software were immediately doing is drawing out those lead times. So people were going from 60 days to now 90 days, 120 days. People are already sourcing or have already placed their orders for Christmas. Started in like, say, March, April, placing their orders for Christmas, as opposed to July, August, which is what the norm used to be. That's a lot of cash to outlay so far in advance. So cash flow has gotten really, really difficult because of these long lead times. And that comes from, shipping delays, ports. I mean, Shenzhen recently shut down. They shut down whole ports, whole factories. Second wave of COVID being threatened. And then power curbing, strangest thing. They're saying that the PR statement, whether it's true or not, is that they're power curbing to try to reach their goal for, green initiative. But regardless, power curbing means that they're restricting the amount of days or the amount of hours that factories can actually have power. Some of them are running on generators, which could drive up cost. And some of them just are not able to, that extends out the time to actually get your product produced. Then we have raw material shortages. Cardboard is one of them. We all use cardboard. Every single seller uses cardboard unless they're switching to wood crates, which is then adding additional weight costs.
Weight costs and things like that. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I also want to paint the picture. People are like, you can't just shut off electricity. You can. I think like that's part of it'd be like water shortages in California for listening from California, or you not having internet for a set amount of days. If you're working from home, you literally can't, you don't work. You just stop. It's not doing paperwork. It's nothing like that. There's nothing being produced. That's why it's such a big deal that a lot of people aren't talking about that. So all those issues on top of each other, and one of the major, export countries in the world, that throws a wrench in a lot of people's plans, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And the power curbing, I mean, there's a term. I lived in Los Angeles. It's called brownouts. And if you know anything about Enron, that's one of the things that was happening is they just turn off the electricity for a while. And that's what's happening in China. And we're seeing the effects of it. And there's not enough conversation around the instability and why the lead times are so long. And so it just puts you at a disadvantage. You are kind of reacting in your business now, and it's hard to plan on something like that.
I was gonna say the planning aspect I think is the worst thing because
Yeah.
you can't now you don't know what's gonna hit when shutdowns are happening again, when electricity is gonna be at your factory or not.
Mhm.
With all that, is 7 months, that seems like such a long time. Like if you're planning now for Christmas, the
Mhm.
seven, I guess what 9 months until Christmas or so, give or take. That's such a long time. So people are just planning on that being backed up for at least the rest of this year, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are starting to see that this is not a temporary situation. We thought get through 2020, everything will be better. People were saying get through 2021. And now we're starting to realize it's not a temporary situation. It's time to pivot our businesses. That one of those things means starting to look for other sources. Others are on the logistics side. Logistics flexibility is something that I talk about, making sure that you have various different points that no one person is in possession of your inventory, and so that you have kind of a steady stream of plan A, B, and C. And looking at Mexico is a great way to diversify and limit your exposure. Doesn't mean that you switch everything to Mexico from China. They don't have everything available. China has, pretty much any product that you would want to find, you can find there. But there are certain products that maybe start to diversify the sourcing locations so that you can kind of be a little bit more flexible. Your eggs aren't all in the China basket.
Right. So what about you said raw material
Mhm.
shortages and delays and costs increasing.
Yeah.
Is that worldwide? Is that just for China? What
Right.
increases what increases the cost in one place versus another? Because if you said, "Hey, I can create this in China, but I can also create the same thing in Mexico," is
Mhm.
there a difference in pricing and cost for that?
So yeah, so raw materials is going to affect various different countries. Not all the raw materials that Mexico needs can Mexico produce. So they are reaching out to other countries, some even out to China, to get those raw materials. So raw material costs and raw material shortages are going to affect multiple parts of the supply chain. So we can bring that up, but that is something that you're going to see a little bit of that effect in Mexico, but it really just depends on what you're building. Aluminum and plastic have been in shorter supply, cardboard, like I mentioned, but there are other products that maybe aren't as difficult to come by and maybe could be sourced directly in Mexico.
So if I was Mexico, what am I known for? If
Mhm.
I had to put like my marketing
Mhm.
dollars to work, hey,
Yeah.
come to Mexico. We make really good what?
So things like textiles, rubber, ceramics, anything artisan, not anything artisan, but some of those artisan products. So if you have, say, a home brand or something, you might be able to find some nice products for that. They also make auto parts and cleaning products, so mops and brooms and those types of things. Some hardware. So that's kind of the sweet spot of where they're sitting, and you might be able to find something depending on your brand. So not every brand is going to be able to source in Mexico, but there are lots of opportunities.
So what other so in that capacity, obviously we went over the pros and cons of China, but
Mhm.
it is there other externalized factors that besides costs, obviously costs kind of fluctuate over time.
Mhm.
What other things that people don't necessarily pay attention to that maybe they should?
Yeah.
For once, again, this is not a political show. Is it
Right.
something that I actually, if I'm sourcing from a country,
Mhm.
specific country, do I need to really look at the politics and the relationship between our countries as well?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's complete polar opposites of the scale in terms of US Mexico and US China. There's a US China trade war, the tariffs, there's, in China, they're boycotting US products. So they're a little bit angry at us. It's kind of there's a little bit of an untenable situation, and we had those Trump tariffs. Not all of them got repealed.
Mhm.
Biden did hold some of those in place. So, I remember going from 0% tariff to 25%, then being able to work to reduce to 10%. But that's still, that there's significant tariff when you look at Mexico, they had the NAFTA and now the USMCA, which is US Mexico Canada agreement, which essentially says we can, with qualifying products, we have a trade relation where we're not charging duty, we're not charging tariff. So you go from 20% to 0 when you look at one country versus the other, and you have a healthy relationship with Mexico.
Sure. Where do I go to find that kind of information? Because again, it could be if I'm sourcing a new product, I want to know that I don't have that additional expense that I didn't account for, or maybe I have to account for in the future. How do where do you find that kind of information?
There are logistics and sourcing companies in Mexico, and that's some of what we're doing with the Mexico trip, is connecting people to these sourcing companies and logistics companies. And we're actually putting together a trade show on June 8th to help to make those connections, because there are people who have that expert hand in understanding, the logistics, how much do things cost, how much does it cost for a container, what things need to be, what things have duties, most things don't, and how to move things from point A to point B in the best way. Sometimes, trucking is the best way to do it, and sometimes container, and you can get access to ports that are actually not as congested. So if you're looking at, the Gulf of Mexico, Florida and Texas have ports that are far underutilized compared to the East and the West Coast. So if you're looking for a solution and how do you kind of navigate this, one is that we're going and doing this Mexico trip and you can come to Mexico with us. And the other is that there are these resources available that are on the ground in China, in Colombia, and in other Latin American countries.
She's promoting without me even going right into it. No, that's something I definitely want to bring up too. Specifically calling out, we can jump in this, and we have a couple questions actually come in. So if you are watching this on social media, especially on LinkedIn, I know that's where we get a lot of viewers from. Throw them in the comment section below. We already have a couple people kind of going back and forth, so I appreciate the commentary. It's definitely very helpful to understand where its values come from, and maybe Chelsea can help answer those questions as well. Mexico trip, very cool. We already put it kind of in the comment section. It's happening pretty quickly. It's going to be happening June 4th through 9th. And again, I understand people, you can put this all in one loop, but if you go to the mexicotrip.com, they separate into one's the sourcing trip. There's also the mastermind trip, 2 different parts of Mexico, which is why you see June 4th through 9th and 9th through 12th, 2 separate events, but you can go to both. Tell me about it, Chelsea. This is the first time I'm promoting / sharing this information. I was asked to, hey, can we maybe talk about this? Of course. I think this is very valuable and helpful information for people who want to see this as an option. Why are you here talking about it?
Yeah. Mostly, I mean, I've been, since first talking about Mexico with someone who was actually on the ground, sourcing and building those relationships with the Mexican government. The thing that's exciting for me is that I do feel that this is a new era in e-commerce. I feel this is a huge step forward for e-commerce. And there's been a lot of theoretical talk about it. Maybe some people have kind of dipped their toe into trying to find out about it. More podcasts and presentations have been speaking on the subject, but this is the first concrete step forward for the community to actually take those theories and those concepts and bring them into actual reality. And that's why I'm excited, because that's one portion of it, taking the strain for people off of supply chain, off of the costs. I was very shocked to find that Mexican labor is actually cheaper than Chinese labor now, which is very surprising. Yeah, that was.
Is that for U.S. based, or is that across the board, just labor in general?
That's for labor in China. So if you're paying, Chinese manufacturer workers versus versus Mexican workers, the price for labor, the cost for labor in China has increased by almost triple in the past from 2010 on to the present. So the cost of labor is rising, and in Mexico they're a little bit more competitive. And then you've got the containers. When you've got a container that is able to be turned around, let's say twice as fast, for an example, twice as fast than a container coming from China, that container is going to be less expensive. So we're looking at $4,000 for a container versus $10,000 for a container. Don't even want to get into the topic of velocity of money, because that's a topic that I love the concept of, but we're not even talking about it as a community. But the amount of times that you can turn over, if I can turn over my inventory twice as fast as you can, and I can get that money back, I'm going to be able to scale a lot faster.
Yep.
So those are all reasons that it's exciting to look at. If you ask anyone, if I could cut your lead time in half, would you be interested?
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone will raise their hands.
Yeah, and that was something that I know Tyler Jeffco, I'm not sure if you know him, a seller accountant. He talks about the velocity of how fast are you turning over your inventory, makes yourself more profitable, makes yourself look good as a business. And if you're exiting your business anytime soon in the next 12 to 48 months, this is a good time to start thinking about velocity and turnover, cash flow, things like that. Again, not a lot of people are talking about that. That is very true.
Not yet.
Everyone likes a lot. I was going to say, everyone likes to talk about the concept of gaining money, but it's the concept of where it's coming and going too. So very, very fascinating. We'll bring back Mexico trip and kind of talk about what that's going to cover. But we had Ivan. Thank you for tuning in on LinkedIn. We appreciate all of our LinkedIn followers as well. Mexico is good for American market, but for Europe, it's not very interesting. And I know we had a little bit of a Tal who's also part of the Mexico trip cohort. I believe that there is FTA EU Mexico, correct? So do you see where that conversation is going, and maybe answer Ivan's question?
I'm not especially an expert on that topic. I'm sure we've got other podcasts where people can come on and discuss that, but I don't want to kind of speak to that without prior knowledge.
Sure. But maybe kind of conceptually, if for European-based sellers, Mexico makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. So I understand the fact that it is further away than the U.S. market. So that definitely makes sense. And there is going to be additional expense in terms of transport. But like you brought up, the concept of, exiting your business, not only the velocity of turnover, which isn't necessarily a topic for Europe, but the stability of having another country that you're sourcing from, I think is something that is beneficial to the seller, but also when you're going to sell your business, that's something that I think aggregators will be interested in, is just having a little bit more stability of supply chain.
Yep. And that's one of the major criteria that even now a lot of people say, hey, they may not be acquiring as much. That's for one reason and one reason only: stability of supply chain. They need to know that you have options and it's secure, not just solely relying on one stance of coming from China, but actually it could be coming from China. You could be producing in the United States. You could be sourcing from Mexico or India or all these other countries that have options as well. But you have that down, and that option is very secure too. So
the other thing I always like to say, theoretically we could say, oh, it's not worth looking into, for Europeans to source for the European market in Mexico. I mean, we source from China to the US, and we source from various different countries. The only thing that will answer that question for you is to dive into the data and look at the math.
And also to attend the Mexico trip to see if it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, looking at, like, for me, I'm a numbers person. If the math makes sense, then let's go. And kind of wholesale writing off the concept of sourcing in a specific location because of distance doesn't really look at all the math, because you have those. I don't know what tariffs the China and Europe have specifically, but there are all those aspects involved, and until you actually break down every aspect of it, you can't really make that decision as to completely write off Mexico for the European market.
So I was going to say, what opportunities are you seeing? Like, what are the major wins? What is Mexico, besides obviously being closer? Is that the major win? That proximity just means less distance from your goods to have to get from here to there. Well, what are those major?
I mean, that, it all, cost in general, the proximity in general, and then just being able to access different types of products. One of the other benefits is just, again, proximity, being able to have more oversight in the process, better relationships, because it is harder to get over to China. And most people who are selling on Amazon have never met the factory owners, have never met the individuals that they're working with and have been working with for years. Mexico, for most people in the US, it's easier to get there. It's sometimes easier to get to Mexico than China for other reasons, especially now that COVID has occurred. It's a little bit harder to get there. The culture shock probably isn't as strong either, I think.
Right. And also time, I think time also has a time zone of when you can communicate with your supplier also has a major factor of if you're looking in Europe or in the United States, I think that's a major, 12-hour difference plus that you have to communicate with your suppliers and manufacturers.
Yeah.
That is a factor that you have to consider when your own time is at hand, when you're communicating, when you can do business, how long your communications are between days when you're actually operating. So it does matter. In proximity, you might be operating at +1, 2, maybe even 3, depending on where in the United States you are. So also very major component. Give me some downsides. It's not all sunshine rainbows with Mexico. Obviously, NAFTA is another thing that North American Trade Agreement is very free trade within United States and Mexico.
Yeah.
What else? What's those? That might be a turnoff for me. Maybe Mexico is not worth it then.
Yeah. For one, it's still developing. Their supply chains maybe aren't as solidified. They can't get, you can't, like I said, produce every product. China has that advantage of just having a whole selection of, of products that you can choose.
A cornucopia of goods.
Yes, maybe some you even didn't want to know existed. Supplier relations are a little bit, they're not as established. People aren't as familiar with selling to Amazon sellers. China kind of has that down. They know exactly what to do. And so you would have a little bit of training process to get them to understand how to assemble and package a product for Amazon. And so that would be, another aspect, supplier, building supplier relations. However, you can go, if you are in the US, you can get down there more quickly. So you do have more of an opportunity to kind of cement that connection if you were to travel there.
Excellent. So with that capacity, is there, because it's a little bit different, you're talking about either ocean freight or you're talking about air freight coming from China. Is the way that your goods are getting into the country, is that a major component that you have to consider, like trucking or train? Is that an option that you can do? Is that more or less difficult to navigate?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, those are options. And, the logistics, the logistics people that I've talked to in Mexico have said those are two very good options. It's more cost effective to do a full truckload than it is to do less than truckload. But trucking in, let's say to Texas is one solution, and then also trucking into California is another. If you've got inventory going to California, so you do have those benefits of being able to get inventory into the country more quickly, especially for people, let's say, who aren't shipping a whole container, who want to get inventory into the country more quickly.
That makes a lot of sense. So in that capacity, I guess we're talking about very high level stuff. Are you at SoStocked? Is that something that, like, how are you guys looking as an option now in terms of diversification? Because a lot of it, I'm assuming, was really focused on the whole operations within China, maybe India as well, and the growing capacities. How has this changed the way that you and your company have developed and grown and kind of looked at things?
Sure. I think that it's, for us, just the topic of conversation of decreasing lead times and speeding up kind of some of the strain in terms of development of the tool. I think that we've kind of got things built in already, but what can be done, like one of the things we're very interested in is we have something. It's not just forecasting. A lot of, the concept that you have of forecasting is looking at the past and seeing what we could do in the future. It's also something called forecast modeling and eventually cash flow modeling, which I think is a very interesting topic. It's not just what was happening in the past. and taken that data, and then what are the plans, the marketing plans that we have. But what would happen if I changed my payment terms with my supplier? What would happen if I shortened my lead time? What would I be able to do? And so if you're looking at the possibility of switching some of your products to being able to source in Mexico, to be able to quickly flip a switch and look at a shorter lead time and see how that can help your ordering process and help your turnover, I think is an effective part of the analysis process for a seller.
Absolutely. I was going to, and kind of in the last couple of minutes, I know that you're busy. I'm one of 3 live streams for you today, so I'm not going to wear you out in the first one today. I just want to go back to you for people. What does Mexico trip kind of means? I know we kind of mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
Why now? Or I guess I should say, where did this kind of idea come from? How did you get involved, and why do people need to really put this on their radar?
Sure. So this is the, I guess, brainchild of a couple of different people in the space, Amy Weiss and Tim Jordan and Norm Farrar. So, kind of important people who
all friends of the show, I'll say.
Yes. So they looked at, they all kind of independently, or, Amy independently of Tim and Norm had this idea. They wanted to do Mexico and realized that this is something that they could join forces together and really build this thing big. And it's very, it's come together in a great way. Started out looking at sourcing, and there are some factory visits involved, going to factories, but then did something fantastically impressive to me. I was shocked at, the fact that they're putting on a trade show, that they're helping to put on a trade show, because you can only go to so many factories and in such a short amount of time as, 5 days or so. But the whole idea is to bring Mexico and bring Latin America and Latin American vendors and manufacturers to one location so that you can very quickly meet as many as possible. So that's what the trip is. The first part of the trip is going to Mexico City. There's going to be a lot of different industry professionals. So I'm going to be going there talking about logistics, inventory management. There will be people talking about sourcing in Mexico, logistics, and then just various different topics about Amazon and e-commerce selling in general. So that's the first and foremost, the sourcing trip. On the 8th of that is the LATAM trade show. And then after that, fly off to Cancun for the mastermind. And the mastermind is, bunch of really smart people, Paul Barron, all these guys who are putting on the event, Amy and Tim and Norm, as well as other people such as, like I said, Paul Barron, Carlos Alvarez, Vanessa Hung. So you've got some really great people, and you're going to be able to build relationships. That's always been the most valuable thing for me in the masterminds, is being able to build relationships with some really, really smart people that, just showing up to an event where there's 3,000 people and you're just one of them, it's not as easy to build those relationships as, sticking yourself in a hot tub with some of these people,
exactly.
With some drinks and hanging out, so, and it's Cancun, so yeah, so that's kind of the general rundown. You're on the Mexico site, can kind of take a look at who's going to, if you go to the sourcing page or the mastermind page, you'll see who's
there. Yeah.
Yep. There they are. Yeah. Who's speaking, what the schedule is, what you're going to be doing every day. Some fun excursions, of course, because I just posted this on my Facebook. Work hard, play hard has always been kind of the mantra for the e-com seller in general, I think.
Yeah, you all are crazy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a part of that too. If Prosper has anything to say, it's a lot of fun just to get to know people who actually do put a lot of emphasis on their business, and they have a lot of sacrifices. But I think they also know that all that is for a reason, and you want to celebrate those things, but you can do it together. So very much a community thing, like we have here on here on Crossover Commerce, but also just to see really cool people, have an excuse to go to Cancun in June. I guess that's a cool work trip. But yeah, with that being said, is it limited? Like, what do you know details, or should they
Mhm.
just go to the
Sure.
website? What is that?
Yep. Yeah. So we're only taking 100 people to the sourcing and the Cancun trip. So 100 each. You can go to both of them. You can go to one or the other, but it maxes out at 100 participants. The if you just wanted to go to the trade show, let's say even you were local to Mexico, you want to come to the trade show, we have a larger capacity for that, but we are locking down to 100 attendees for the other two events.
Gotcha. So 100 attendees. Obviously, there'll be great people like yourself attending and other speakers, but also service providers. You saw some sponsors
Yeah.
that are making waves in the space, and clearly you'll get to learn and pick their brains too. So
Yeah.
that being
And then
said, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then the day that we do have the Evo LATAM trade show, of course, in true, in true fashion and style, we are having a big blowout networking party as well. So, so that should be really good for anyone, especially if, it's a short trip for you. Definitely something worth putting on your calendar.
Absolutely. And it looks like, a lot of it all inclusive resorts and things like that. Obviously, so you
Mhm.
don't have to do too much planning, just reach out, secure your spot at the event, and go to, you got to write down there this the mexicotrip.com. I hope that you guys make, or I hope there's a conglomerate that makes it for every country that's
Yeah.
worthwhile to go to. So there's just the Mexico trip, like,
Yeah.
or the India trip. Well, there's a lot out there too, which is really cool to start seeing those pop up again too. So,
Mhm.
uh, Chelsea, before we let you go, what do you have going on at SoStocked? What should we do to look out for in
Uh-huh.
the coming weeks, months before we
Yeah.
see you next?
Yeah, so we're really working hard on integrations. Shopify should be coming out relatively soon. We have a new seasonality tool that is far more advanced than even what we had before that people were asking for. So that's exciting. And then later on this year, my big focus, like I mentioned, I'm kind of obsessed with the concept of velocity of money and profitability. We launched a tool called the Master Carton Calculator, which helps you to reduce the number of cartons and the number of pallets. It gives you a new pack list based on your unit dimensions and your pallet size, gives you the best carton optimization as well as pallet optimization. And people can find that at sostock.com/tools. It's a free tool that we offer, but that's been really just the big focus for me in the coming months is how can we help people make more money. And so I'm talking a lot about that and presenting on a lot of that side of things. And then the tools, we are developing tools later this year to increase profitability.
Love that. Always making more money, or at least keep more of your money. And like
Yeah.
you had mentioned pre-show, death by 1,000 paper cuts. We're going to start bandaging those cuts, if you will, and start putting more money back into people's pockets. So, hey,
Yes.
thank you so much. If they want to connect, obviously, is that through social media? Those are through those
Yeah.
handles as well.
Yeah. So sostock.com/connect. All my social media is there. And the link to the tools, the free tools that we have, because we do have a good number of tools.
Right on. As well. Thank you so much, Chelsea. You've been awesome. Again, thanks for hopping. You were volunteered for this, so
Yes.
I'm gonna. But you've been on the show before, so we love having our friends back on. Hey, you have a busy schedule, so we'll let you go. Thank you so much for hopping on Crossover Commerce today, talking about obviously is Mexico the next China, and of course, kind of giving a little hint at the upcoming Mexico trip. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you everyone else for who was joining us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. This is episode 235 of Crossover Commerce. We have a lot of action-packed episodes this week. We have more events that we're going to be talking about, plus cool demos and tools from the friends over at Carbon 6. And then we, like I said, the event that we're talking about tomorrow is going to be with our friends over at Ecom Chris and their event in Bend, Oregon. If you haven't heard about it, maybe you can check it out. But of course, great content and learnings are going to be coming from that as well. So without further ado, this is Crossover Commerce episode 235. Thank you so much, Chelsea from SoStocked, and thanks the Mexico trip for reaching out and trying to get the word out for this great event. Go ahead and check it out at themexicotrip.com. We'll catch you guys next time on another episode of Crossover Commerce. Take care.